A few years ago, my wife and I ventured to the Mediterranean coast of Italy. Blue waters, yellow lemon groves everywhere, and artwork featuring, what? A cactus. Not just any cactus, but the icon of the Sonoran Desert, which prompted the question, which led to the film, answering and responding to, what's with the saguaro?
The saguaro is the icon of home to me, and it's something that helps me explain to people when I'm traveling or when I have lived in other places and they want to know about where I'm from. I can tell them I'm from the Sonoran Desert, and then if they give me a blank look, I can say, well, you know, that cactus that's tall and has arms like this, and everybody says yes. The tallest documented saguaro was 78 feet tall. They, on average, top off at about 45 feet. Generally, it'll start growing its first arm when it's 75 to 100 years old.
I see the saguaro, I find it majestic. It's the sentinel of the Southwest. When I got here, before that I knew nothing about saguaros. Absolutely nothing, except that I used to see them on the floor of the U of A games. They weigh as much as 8 to 10 tons.
You know, some of the saguaros you see out here in the desert are hundreds of years old. And when you take into consideration the people that carved out a living here, you know, they got their housing, their food, their clothing, everything that they needed to survive, they got from the land. You can't help but to admire the indigenous people that lived here.
When I was small, I remember I had a red wagon. I'd go down to the desert on Elvernon and Glen, and I'd dig up cactus where they were going to bulldoze them, or I'd find them on the ground that were knocked over by the bulldozer, and I'd pick them up, put them in that shovel, or with my shovel, and put them in my little wagon and wheel it home and plant it in my yard. And my parents thought I was crazy. I think they still think I'm crazy.
Sometimes a saguaro cactus reminds me of a person because there's like two arms going out like this. Or I've seen saguaro cactuses looking like they're hugging each other.
Their skin is rougher than mine. I have really bad skin, wrinkly and stuff. And I would just wish that when it rains that my skin would fill up and I wouldn't have so many wrinkles.
The saguaro cactus reminds me of like families because sometimes I see a bunch of cactuses next to each other and I like imagining that it's our family.
I think about my childhood a lot. My dad used to take me out to the desert to teach me like how life revolves around saguaro cactuses in the desert, like, you know, animals, and then like a lot of native people like to revolve their life around it too.
I grew up in a house made out of saguaros. Like I say, they went up to Tortolitas to gather the saguaro ribs, and then they either railroad ties or mesquite posts, and they would put the saguaros next to each other, and then use the same saguaro and then tie them together. Our house that we lived in was very cool in the summertime, and it was warm in the wintertime. The house that I lived in, they collected the saguaro in 1914, and the tribe finally knocked it down on the year 1996, and it was still strong.
Así que pues para mí era una experiencia muy bonita. Nosotros llevábamos baldecitos y la carriábamos nosotros las tunas cuando mi abuela hacía un dulce riquísimo con eso y todo el tiempo lo compartíamos en familia.
The saguaro is a central species for both habitat of animals and food source of animals, and be a soil stabilizer as well. The saguaro provides nectar for both bats and moths, and then its fruit is a source for birds. It's also a home, so the Gila woodpecker goes after bugs that might be on the saguaro and pecks out a hole in the cactus. The cactus then forms a scar tissue around that hole that we call a saguaro boot, and inside that boot the woodpecker might move in, but all sorts of other birds will move in and make their nests as well.
People think just because they have spines and stuff that they can protect themselves, which they can, but not against mankind.
I salvaged 10,000 acres in Silverbell Mountains a few years back, and I worked there for an entire year, 7 days a week, salvaging cactus that would have been bulldozed. I try and save the saguaro. I have a lot of compassion for saguaros. I just symbolize to me it just strength. It's Arizona. You can go other places in the world and you can see a picture of a saguaro and you're like, holy cow, that's Arizona.
Now it's your chance to answer the question, what's with the saguaro? Contemplating the people, the place, the spirit of the Sonoran Desert.
De Guatemala. La primera vez que vine al desierto, me enamoré de él, sinceramente. Pero lo que ganó mi corazón fueron los saguaros en el desierto. Los saguaros son como soldados cuidando la tierra, como espíritus de los nativos americanos con sus brazos hacia el cielo dando gracias al universo. Es una cosa hermosa.